I've got some more amps today from Aurora DSP. On guitars is Mr. Hector, and on bass is Gorilla. Now, this is sort of a two-part video series, very short series. The last one I covered Rhino and Mammoth, and this time I'm checking out the other two, and that'll be most of their amps except for Goblin, which is free. There's a lot of videos on that and not too much to talk about. I wrote 2 songs for this project. I did the first song in the other video, and this time I've got the second song. That makes sense, doesn't it? They're both on my 30-inch Fender Squier Jazzmaster baritone guitar, which I also did a video on. It's a cool guitar. I'm doing some kind of Meshuggah style stuff. So let's get into the demo, and then I'll show you my final tones and a little bit about the plugins, what makes them unique. So without further ado, the song. So first up, we've got the Mr. Hector, an amp from Laboga, an official collaboration between them two. Aurora and Laboga are both Polish companies, and this is a amp from a time when the Soviet Union, you couldn't buy foreign amps very easily. So they had to make them at home in Poland. And apparently this amp's been on a bunch of famous records. There's some stuff about it in the manual. It's a cool story, and it's a cool amp. This plugin has a pretty standard interface. We can switch between mono and stereo modes. Up here, we've got a noise gate, just a single knob. You can set the level, you can set your input level. And then on the amp here, we've got clean and lead channels with their respective gain and bright switches, high and low input. We've got a 3-band EQ with a mid switch, and it's got kind of an upper mid push or a low mid push or cut. And then this is a kind of interesting feature that you don't see all the time. This is the diode or tube switch. This changes the rectifier, I think, in the amp, the power stage. You can go for the diode, the solid state, which I used here, which is tighter, a little brighter, kind of more aggressive and faster response. Or you can go for the tube for a more flubby and maybe natural, organic sound, if that's what you're into. For this track, I thought diode definitely sounded better, and I'm not opposed to solid state things. Here in the stomp section, we've got a tube screamer, the tone shaper, which kind of adds highs and lows, I believe, as you turn up this one dial here. Then we've got the unified preamp, which you can actually check out for free. they released a standalone of just this pedal. And this is a preamp made famous by Meshuggah, so it's certainly appropriate here. It's got a volume control. It's got a bass boost or cut and a treble. And for this kind of low-tuned music, I like to cut some of the bass and boost some of the treble and boost some volume. I'm not actually using the tube screamer here because I've got the unified preamp, and I am using the tone shaper a little bit. It doesn't make a drastic difference, but it does kind of add a little aggression if you push it. With this amp, I just started with the default preset, and I tweaked it a little bit to fit the mix better, but already the default preset sounded good. They made some good choices. It's not just everything at noon, so there was some thought put into just the default settings when you load it up. In the cab section, we've got two cabs that were also made by Laboga, and these are custom cabs. This is a 3x12, which is rather unusual. I don't know if that has any advantage over a 412, but hey, we've got a 312 here and a 212. Probably good for your leads or your cleans. Also doesn't sound bad on rhythms. In the speaker section, there are 4 speakers. Now, the old 30 is the vintage 30, and the vet 30 is going to be the veteran 30, which is a similar speaker, but made by Warehouse guitar speakers. It's definitely got a different sound, but a similar design, I guess. The RIP 55 and the Big 12L, I'm not sure exactly what they are, but, well, the Big 12L, that's probably a G12L. I think that's used in a lot of Marshall cabs. And the 55, I'm not sure. It doesn't say in the manual. The mic selection, they don't tell us really what kind they are, but we've got a dynamic, small diaphragm condenser, large diaphragm condenser, and a ribbon mic. And, of course, the SM57 would be the likely choice for the dynamic. The ribbon, I don't know what it is. The Royer 121 is the most obvious, but the Biodynamic M160 is also a popular choice. And the condensers, well, they could be anything. But either way, I went with the dynamic and the vintage 30 on the left hand here, and then the veteran 30 and the small diaphragm condenser on this right hand speaker. And we've got a nice blend slider at the bottom, so you can just blend the amount of each speaker in the mix. So I did play around with those, tried out a few different things, and that's what I did with this. There's also an air knob, which adds high frequencies. Didn't think it needed it in this case, so I left that off. In the effects section, we've got some fairly standard stuff, but the limiter has this low-end control, which is also in Rhino. It's kind of like the Andy Sneap trick, where you clamp down on the chugs and keep everything in control, keep it a little tighter. I like that trick, and you've got it right here in the limiter. We've got a ping-pong delay. We all know what that is, and a reverb. Then the EQ, we've got a 12-band. It's a little unusual layout since it's vertical like this, but you've got 12 decibels of gain, up or down, and a high and low pass filter. So pretty much everything you could need for just about any circumstance. We don't have a chorus or a phaser. Compared to the Rhino, that has some more effects and features, which I like, and a cool, unique interface. This is more familiar, and it's the only official model of this particular amp. They did work with the amp maker and really try to dial it in to be as close as possible. So I'm going to assume that it's a very faithful recreation of the original one in software form, which is nice to see. Of course, it does have a resizable interface. That is always important to me. So here's my final tone from Mr. Hector, and then we can play around with some of the settings. Let's check out the difference between the diode and the tube mode, starting with the diode, which is what I used in this song. The most apparent difference is just the high end. The diode definitely seems brighter, but I think it also tightens things up in the low end as well. Let's check out the tone stack here. Next, I'll just go through some of the cabs and the speakers so we can hear what the IRs in this are like. That covers Mr. Hector. Now let's check out Gorilla. Now the Gorilla is another bass amp. It's similar to their Mammoth, but I think a little more geared towards perhaps lower gain stuff, though they can both do quite high gain. Either one can be used for metal or clean tones. They just offer a few different features, a little different look, and some different amp models in here. For the preamps, we do have a Fender Bassman on the green channel, an Aguilar Tone Hammer on the yellow channel, and the orange is an Ampeg SVT Classic. So we've got 3 preamp models here with drive or clean modes, the amount of gain up here, and the amount of parallel mix, which is very important. Most people are doing some kind of parallel distortion if they're doing a high gain bass. So you have your mix knob here for your clean and distortion blends. Then we've got a 4-band tone stack with the low and high mid split out, gentle and bright switches. We've got the crossover point for the mid and treble EQ and the bass and mid EQ. And you can add octaves up or down if you want that effect. You can bypass the preamp. You can load custom IRs. We've got 4 stock IRs with their cool little IR blending window here, which I do like. It's handy. You can quickly try out each of these and then blend them to taste. Then we've got this middle and lower portion, which have controls for the bass and the mids with grunt and growl and some limiting, and you can blend the amount overall of your treble, mid, and bass in the final signal. There's also a Gorilla, and it is a knob. It kind of adds some contour, I guess, some kind of highs and lows, and maybe cuts the mids a little bit. I do like it. I've got it cranked all the way up. You can also solo out each band, which is a cool feature that you don't see all the time. So I did start with this Groove Monster Monk preset, but I also ended up changing it quite a bit in the end to fit this mix. I think bass, you're always going to have to tweak stuff. Even if a preset sounds great on its own, you have to fit into the mix, get the lows and the highs right, and suit it to your bass. I'm going to solo the bass here and just play around with some of the settings so you get a sense of how everything sounds. really enjoyed this little demo and look at Mr. Hector and Gorilla. Thanks to Aurora DSP for sending these over to me. And as always, like, subscribe, comment. Yeah, I'll see you in the next video.